Hello everyone, as we continue to go through the Yom Tov davening, let's go to one of the more controversial parts of the Ashkenazic service, and that is, if Yom Tov comes out on a weekday, when we take out the Torah, we say the Yud Gimel Midot, the 13 attributes of mercy, Va'ani Tefilati, that we say 3 times. Is there a problem with it? And the answer is yes, a very big one. The Mishnah in Brachos, Parakeh Mishnah Gimel says, Ha'omer Modi Modi Mashtakim Oto. If you say, thank you God, it's a problem. The Gemara in Brachos, Daf Lamed Gimel Amud Bet into Lamed Daled Amud Aleph says the same is true with regard to Shema. If you say Shema, Shema Yisrael, it's a problem. Ke'omer Modim Modim. Why? Very simply, it seems like you're thinking 2 gods, there's only 1 God, and you're saying it twice. The Gemara then says, Ha'om koret Shema v'chofla, ha'reze meguneh. If you say Shema twice, it's meguneh, it's repulsive. Megunehu dahave, it's repulsive. Shtuke lo mashtikinan le. But you don't tell him to be quiet. You don't say shh to the person like the Mishnah said about modim modim. The Gemara answers lo kasha. Ha damar milta milta vetani le. Veha damar psuke sikwe vetani le. There's a big difference if he says a full pasuk twice versus if he says 1 word twice. The Gemara, however, doesn't spell out which is which. Which is repulsive, and which is so repulsive that mashtikim oto, you actually tell him to be quiet. Rashi comes along on that Gemara and says, if you just repeat a word twice, like Shema, Shema, Modim, Modim, that's meguneh, repulsive, but shtuke lo mashtikinan le, you don't shut him up. It's not like he's showing there's 2 gods, it's just he's making a joke. However, Amar Pasuk Sholem Vetani Le, Mashtikinan Le, the Mechsek Ishtei Rishuyot. But if he says a full Pasuk, you tell him to be quiet and publicly, because that looks like he's talking about 2 different gods. Full Pasuk, tell him to be quiet. Just a word. Very repulsive, not encouraged, but you don't have to tell him to be quiet. Explains Rabbeinu Yonah, the reason for this opinion of Rashi is, if you just say the same word twice, maybe it's for good reasons. You said Shema, you didn't mean it, you have to have kavanah, and therefore you repeated it. But if you say a full pasuk twice, that's a dead giveaway that there's 2 gods, chas v'shalom. The Rif understands exactly the opposite. If you say 1 word like Modim Modim or Shema Shema, you tell him to be quiet. But if you say a full pasuk, it's repulsive, it's not good, but you don't publicly tell him to be quiet. And the Tosfos says that this is the opinion of the Bahag as well. Just to fill in the picture, we do have a precedent of repeating things, and that, of course, is in the Hallel, another part of our Yom Tov services. The Mishnah in Sukkah, Perek Gimel Mishnah Yud Aleph says, Makom shenagu lichpol lichpol. If there's a minhag to say it twice, you can say it twice. The Gemara picks up on it in the Masechet Sukkah Daf Lamed Tet Amud Aleph and says, Tani Rabbi Kofel Badvarim. Rashi explains that from Ana Hashem El Shiana, everything's twice. We say Ana Hashem El Shiana twice, Ana Hashem El Tzlichana twice. Rabbi Eliezer ben Parta Mosif Badvarim. Rabbi Eliezer ben Parta would come along and add to Rebbe's saying things twice. My Mosif, Amar Abaye Mosif. Not just Ana Hashem Oshiana, Ana Hashem Atzlichana, like Rebbe said, but rather Baruch Haba, Kel Hashem, Keliyata, and Hodu, he also does. Well, this seems to be against the Gemara that says not to say things twice. Explains Rashi, this is a unique case. The whole entire part of Hallel that we say from Tehillim is all double. A page before that, Daf Lamed Chet, he explains what he means. He says basically, look at Hodu. Hodu Hashem kitov ki l'olam chasdo. Yomuna Yisrael ki l'olam chasdo. Yomuna Beit Aaron ki l'olam chasdo. Yomuna Yireh Hashem ki l'olam chasdo. It seems like we're saying the same thing, but in different words. Everything is double. And then we continue. Tov l'chasot b'Hashem miftoach b'Adam. Tov l'chasot b'Hashem miftoach b'Nedivim. The whole passage from Hodu and onward seems to be double. And therefore it's not a problem. That's the way it was written originally. And therefore it's not a problem to double it up. Uniquely by Hallel, it's not a problem, but in general, outside of Hallel, it should be a problem. From this perspective, what should we do about our particular issue? Because we say Va'ani Tefilati, or the pasuk of Yud Gimel Midot. It's a full pasuk. Either it's repulsive, or it's something that you have to publicly say, be quiet. So how do we say it? 3 times. Well, Bahalocha, the Tosfos, is very machmir. He says that there is a minhag in some places that on Yom Kippur they say Shema Yisrael twice. Our common minhag is to say Baruch Hashem Kvod Malchuto twice, but he says the custom was Shema twice, and in his opinion, you gotta shut him up. Because, according to Rashi, it's a full pasuk, you gotta shut him up. According to the Rif, a full pasuk is only miguneh, only repulsive, but it shouldn't be encouraged from this perspective. And therefore, Tov Shelo Lomar, better not to do it. On the other hand, the Tosfos says, saying Hashem Hu Elokim, as we do at the end of Ne'ilah 7 times, that's wonderful, because that's like the Hallel precedent. Namely, we have a precedent in Tanakh, in Sefer Malachim, that Eliyahu stood on Mount Carmel and said Hashem Elokim twice. So we say it 7 times. Why? Keneged Zayin Rekim, Mishapchim Labore, Shudar Lamala Mizayin. God came down to be with us on Yom Kippur. He's going back to the 7th heaven. So we say it 7 times. Each step that God makes to go up to the 7th heaven, we're escorting him. So therefore, there's a specific reason there, like with Hallel, to say it more than once. But outside of that, absolutely not. And that's the way the Shulchan Aruch paskins. He says that those that say Shema Yisrael twice in the Slichos or on Yom Kippur, Yesh Lamdam Shelo Yomru. Tell them to stop. And on the other hand, Hashem Elokim, he says, is a minhag kasher. Rabbeinu Yonah, on the other hand, says something innovative. He says this whole Isser doesn't apply b'tzibur, in a minyan. שכיוון שמנהג אבותיהם בידיהם מכמה שנים ואומרים אותו כל הקהל, מוכח המילתא שאינם עושים לכוונת בית רשויות. Because everyone's saying it together, and it's part of the minyan protocol, obviously they're davening to one God. That's what a shul is all about, and therefore there's no problem, since everyone's saying it together. His proof is Hashem Elokim, no more, no less. The Bach actually paskins like Rabbeinu Yonah. He says the whole Isser is to say it alone, to say it to yourself. But Kol HaTzibur Omrim La'orer Kol Yisrael Yichud Shema, when you want to get a certain feeling in the shul where everyone is saying God is our God and we have to sacrifice ourselves from God when need be, then it's okay. Or maybe you didn't have kavanah the first time, so you're saying it again. Be it as it may, he says this is a very good thing if it's done b'tzibur, and indeed the Binyan Zion, Rav Zion Ethlinger from Germany, comes and said, Svarat habach nechona. It's a good svara, and even though we shouldn't be paskening against the Shulchan Aruch, b'dvarim shenahagu kein, and the vatera minhag. In things that the Jewish people did as a minhag, you shouldn't go and cancel it, even if the Shulchan Aruch paskins differently. So therefore, how do we say Va'ani Tefilati and the Yud Gimel Midot 3 times? We found a little heter, and that is, since it's done b'tzibur, maybe it's a good idea because it enhances our dedication to God. God willing, tomorrow we'll see specifically what the poskim said about Va'ani Tefilati and Yud Gimel Midot.
היה אברהם